Chapter 3. An Invitation to Sin. The words on the screen glowed with a malevolent innocence, a digital siren call that shattered the morning's sacred peace. An invitation to sin, tonight, UN? The change in Lamb was instantaneous and absolute. The languid, contempted lover vanished, and in his place was the predator. He withdrew from her, not just physically pulling back to sit on the edge of the bed, but emotionally, erecting walls of ice around the molten core of his possession. The warm, heavy weight of his body was gone, and Chloe felt the loss like a sudden chill. The air between them, once thick with shared intimacy, now crackled with a new, sharp tension. The Astors, Liam said, his voice flat and hard, stripped of all its earlier warmth. It was the voice he used in the boardroom just before dismantling a competitor. Julian and Isabella Astor. The name alone was a brand, a byword for a kind of hedonism so exclusive it was mythological in their circles. They weren't just a couple who enjoyed the lifestyle. They were its architects, its gatekeepers. Their parties were legendary, decadent, elaborate affairs where fantasies were courted like fine art and boundaries were treated as suggestions. They had been invited once before, years ago, but had been too new to their explorations, too timid to step into that gilded inferno. "I didn't know you were still in contact with them," Liam stated, his back a rigid wall of muscle. "I'm not really," Chloe said, sitting up, pulling the silk sheet to her chest. It felt less like modesty and more like a shield. "Isabella messages sometimes, a gallery opening, a charity gala, never this." "This," Lem repeated, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. He looked at her, and his piercing blue eyes were no longer filled with adoration, but with a complex, stormy mix of jealousy and assessment. "Tonight." The single word hung between them, heavy with implication. Not next week, not next month, tonight. Hours from now, after he had just flown halfway across the world, driven by a primal need to be with her, to reclaim her, the invitation felt like a personal affront, a deliberate sabotage of their reunion. A familiar, exhilarating flutter sparked in Chloe's chest. It was a thrill of the unknown, the tantalizing pull of a shared adventure. This was the other side of their passion, the counterpoint to the fierce, possessive intimacy they had just shared. It was the reason their marriage had never dulled, never settled into a comfortable routine. "It could be interesting," she offered, her voice soft, testing the waters. Liam's jaw tightened. Interesting. He stood up and began pacing, the caged energy of a panther returning to him. He was naked, a masterpiece of raw power and controlled violence, and the sight sent a shiver of pure desire through her, completely at odds with the tension. "Chloe, I just spent 3 days feeling like a part of my own soul was on the other side of the planet. I came home and I needed to remind myself you were real, that you were mine." He gestured vaguely toward the bed, toward the scene of their passionate reunion. That, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl, was about shutting the world out, not flinging the doors wide open for Julian Astor and his circus of curiosities. "Is that what you think this is?" she challenged gently, her adventurer's spirit rising to meet his resistance. "Flinging the doors open? Or is it about walking through a door together, knowing we're holding the only key that matters?" She leaned forward, letting the sheet dip lower. "You know our rules, Lem. What we have, what we just shared, is the anchor. Everything else is just a story we write together." Her words were a calculated appeal to their shared philosophy, the very foundation of their unique bond. They had rules, painstakingly negotiated. No emotional entanglements, no separate adventures. And the most important rule of all, the one they had just verbally reaffirmed in the height of their passion. Their core intimacy was sacrosanct, a private temple no one else could ever enter. "The Astors don't care about rules," he shot back, stopping his pacing to fix her with an intense stare. "They care about chaos, about pushing people to see where they break. We know their reputation." He was right, of course. The stories about the Astors' parties were whispers of stunning women and powerful men, of secret rooms and scenarios that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. It was a playground for the apex predators of their world, and it was dangerous. The potential for a genuine misstep, for their carefully constructed rules to be fractured, was immense. And that, Chloe knew, was precisely the source of Liam's conflict. His possessiveness was at war with the part of him that was addicted to the thrill, the part that loved watching her navigate these complex social webs, knowing that at the end of the night she came home only to him. "Are you afraid we'll break?" she asked, her voice a seductive whisper, cutting straight to the heart of his fear. He flinched as if she'd struck him. "I'm afraid of losing 1 second of what I just got back," he admitted, his voice raw with a vulnerability that stole her breath. "I don't want to share your gaze. I don't want to watch other men look at you and fantasize. Not tonight. Tonight, I wanted you all to myself." The obstacle was clear, laid bare between them. It wasn't about trust. It was about his deep-seated, primal jealousy, heightened by distance and his desperate need for her. Their fierce reunion hadn't been enough to bank the fires. It had only fanned the flames of his need to keep her locked away, safe in their golden cage. She rose from the bed, the sheet falling away as she walked toward him, utterly unself-conscious in her nudity. She met his stormy gaze without fear, her own confidence a tangible force. She stopped directly in front of him, placing her hands on his chest, feeling the frantic, powerful beat of his heart beneath her palms. "What happened this morning proved that no one can touch us, Liam," she murmured, tilting her head back to look up at him. "It proved that you own me in the only way that matters. Going to this party won't change that. It will amplify it. Think of it. Being in a room full of temptation and feeling nothing but the pull back to each other. Isn't that the ultimate test? The ultimate proof of what we are?" He stared down at her, his hands coming up to grip her waist, his thumbs pressing into her soft flesh. His grip was tight, a desperate, possessive hold. He was a man torn, caught between his instinct to hoard his treasure and the intoxicating allure of putting it on display, daring the world to try and take it. The invitation was no longer just a message on a phone. It was a challenge, a dare. Can you indulge in the fantasy without fracturing the reality? Are your rules, your bond, truly strong enough? He didn't answer. He simply stared into her warm, knowing eyes, his own a tempest of conflict. The decision hung in the air, a palpable, vibrating thing, and they both knew that no matter what he said next, the test had already begun.